Alongside seemingly peaceful days, amidst the hustle and bustle of everyday life, Han quietly eked out a living as usual. She walked along familiar paths, carrying with her the patience and perseverance deeply ingrained in the life of a woman accustomed to shouldering all burdens. Passing by a durian orchard along the road, Han noticed the landowner diligently tending to each tree. Under the scorching sun, the elderly man bent over, fertilizing and watering the vast orchard. Han stopped to inquire, learning that he couldn't hire any help that day and was managing the heavy work alone. Without hesitation, Han rolled up her sleeves and helped the landowner, Dan's father, fertilize and water the durian trees. Her movements, though simple, were quick and diligent, reflecting the image of a hard-working, considerate woman, always willing to help others, without expecting anything in return. While gardening, the landowner kindly inquired about Han and little Tom's lives. His warm voice and caring gaze made the atmosphere in the lush green garden feel more intimate and warm. Han didn't hide anything, gently sharing the difficulties she had faced, the dedicated help from Miss Quer, and many other kind people who had extended a helping hand to her and her son during their hardships. Thanks to Han's help, the gardening work was significantly eased and completed much faster. The landowner praised her profusely, feeling a mixture of affection and respect. Watching Han work and behave, he secretly wished how wonderful it would be to have such a kind, hard-working, and considerate daughter-in-law. He understood very well that since Han's arrival and the events that had transpired, his son, Than, had changed considerably. Than's calmness, responsibility, and maturity were not accidental, and he believed that Han's quiet but persistent presence was partly responsible for that change. At that moment, a major event gradually unfolded, silently but heavily like a storm approaching. Dan woke up in a dazed state, his head spinning, his memories fragmented like pieces of a puzzle not yet put together. He didn't know what had happened, nor did he remember why he was there, until Than appeared before him. Seeing Than, Dan was stunned. Through Than's slow but anxious account, he learned that he had fainted near Main's house and that Than had discovered him and promptly taken him to the hospital. Without that help, no one could be sure what worse things might have happened. Dan fell silent, a feeling of gratitude mixed with confusion rising in his heart. When Dan became more alert, Than cautiously mentioned Dan's mother. Just one sentence was enough to make the atmosphere heavy. Dan's eyes flickered, his hands clenched. He found himself in a difficult position, unsure how to face what awaited him. Not wanting to prolong the conversation, Dan quickly thanked Than for his help, citing urgent matters before leaving, abandoning the words he'd left unsaid. Than stood silently, watching Dan's figure disappear, his heart heavy. A jumble of thoughts overwhelmed him, for Dan himself was undergoing a fierce internal struggle. No one understood better than him how much anguish and torment Dan had endured before deciding to report Dieu and his mother's wrongdoings to the police. He understood that, no matter how harsh the truth, no matter the pain and heartbreak, the truth needed to be revealed. Only when everything was brought to light could the wrongdoings end, and the innocent have a chance to be freed from this long-standing tragedy. Elsewhere, Dieu was in a state of extreme panic, knowing she was under police surveillance for suspected escape. Directly linked to Vu, she frantically sought a way to flee. Familiar roads suddenly seemed strange, her breaths ragged with overwhelming fear. Behind her, 2 police officers persistently pursued her. Without much delay, using professional tactics, they quickly subdued Dieu when she had no escape route. Despite her stubborn denials of wrongdoing, Dieu was taken to the police station for questioning. The woman who had been on the run, trying every way to evade responsibility, was finally called upon by the law. Dieu was officially arrested, marking an irreversible turning point in her long-standing series of mistakes. Immediately afterward, Than rushed to find Han upon hearing that the police had officially launched an investigation. As a victim, Han was also summoned to the police station to give her statement. Than couldn't hide his anxiety, because things had now gone far beyond what he had imagined, becoming more complicated and burdensome than ever before. He didn't want Han to face everything alone. In Than's eyes was genuine concern and a determination to be by her side during this difficult time. When Than offered to take Han to the police station, Han simply nodded in agreement. That slight nod contained trust and a touch of vulnerability after enduring so much pain. Than breathed a sigh of relief, a feeling of indescribable ease rising in his heart. At least, for now, Han wouldn't have to walk alone. Then they both left, carrying with them unanswered worries, but also the hope that the truth would eventually be revealed, and justice would not forget those who had suffered. At the police station, Han mustered all her courage to recount the entire incident. She slowly recounted every detail, every painful memory, from Dieu hiring people, to stalk, attack, and threaten her, to the serious harm her family suffered. Han also didn't hide the roles of Vu and Miss Than in this series of wrongdoings. Although each word seemed to reopen old wounds, Han remained resolute, understanding that only the truth could end it all. Faced with clear evidence and consistent testimony, Dieu had no way to deny it. She bowed her head and admitted her guilt. Miss Than initially tried to deny her guilt and justify herself, but under the investigative efforts of the police, her role as an accomplice was gradually exposed. Unable to evade the truth, Miss Than finally confessed, her eyes revealing belated remorse. Authorities concluded that this was a serious, organized incident that disrupted public order and directly affected the safety of citizens. A decision was made to detain Dieu and Miss Than pending prosecution, while Vu remains a fugitive, not yet apprehended. Despite suffering the most, Han displayed rare compassion. She proactively requested that authorities consider mitigating the sentences for Dieu and Miss Than, with the sole desire of living a peaceful life, free from fear and further harassment. Her words deeply moved Dieu. In her final moments before being led away, Dieu turned back to offer a sincere apology to Han, promising to reform and hoping that one day, if given the chance, she could return as a better person, even a true friend to Han. After completing the procedures, Than and Han left the police station and encountered Dan waiting outside. Just seeing him, Han understood that things had gone too far, and that, to some extent, the tragedy stemmed from her. She proactively apologized to Dan for unintentionally putting him in a difficult position, forcing him to face heartbreaking choices. Dan remained silent for a moment, then gently shook his head. He didn't blame Han, because more than anyone else, he understood that this was the price of mistakes that needed to be stopped. Citing other matters, Dan turned and left, but before leaving, he instructed Dan to take Han home and protect her carefully, a quiet but responsible message. Meanwhile, Dieu and Miss Than were officially detained, separated from society, to await trial. This was the unavoidable price for the crimes they had committed, and also the end of a long series of tragedies, opening a new chapter, where justice is served, and good people have a chance to start over. After the summons ended, with all the crimes brought to light, Han was quietly taken by Than back to Miss Kwa's house, where she and her son, Tom, were temporarily staying. The journey home felt longer than usual, not because of the distance, but because Han's heart was still filled with conflicting emotions that hadn't yet subsided. Although her worries about Vu's arrest remained, Han felt somewhat more at ease knowing she was under the protection of the police. For the first time after a series of anxious days, she felt a fragile but real sense of security, a fulcrum to help her move forward. Upon arriving home, Miss Koa greeted Han with loving eyes. Without asking many questions or reproaching her, she gently comforted and encouraged Han to let go of her worries, to believe in the fairness of the law, and to believe that everything would eventually have a fitting conclusion. Those simple words, though unassuming, were a soothing balm for the deep pain in the young mother's heart. In the corner of the house, little Tom played peacefully, his clear laughter dispelling some of the heavy atmosphere. Looking at her son, Han smiled softly. Although life still held many challenges ahead, she understood that as long as Tom was safe, all hardships would be worthwhile. The story concludes with a sense of reflection, leaving more for contemplation than a simple conclusion. Will justice be fully served to restore peace to the life of this 16-year-old single mother? The answer remains to be seen. But more than a journey in search of justice, this is also a journey of compassion, of enduring resilience, and of the yearning for peace of a small person amidst the harsh storms of life. And sometimes, as long as there is faith, people can still move forward, even if the road ahead is not smooth.